Okay, now this picture is a good candidate for what we need to talk about, and that is once you've done all your cropping and rotating and whatever, the next thing you need to do is to sort out the tonal values, the dark and the light. Now if you look at this, it's looking rather grey. It can be improved. Now I could throw a filter all over it and make it look really kind of weird and exotic, but instead I just want to make it look a little bit better. Now if we come to our Adjust tab again, there's three controls here that I want to take a look at. Exposure, contrast, saturation. I've put them in this order: exposure, contrast, saturation. That's the way I want it. I'll explain why. Exposure, that adjusts the overall lightness of the picture. Yeah, that's what you want to do first. So let's make it a bit lighter because those bed sheets are looking distinctly greyish. I'll take that up a little bit. I can always come back to this. But now my problem is, okay, the bed sheets are looking a little bit lighter, but the baby is looking really washed out. So I'm going to come to contrast. Now what I'm aiming for with dark and light, I want the darks to be dark, but not so dark that I'm losing detail in the shadows. And I want the lights to be nice and light, but not so light that you're losing any detail in the highlights of the picture. I'll show you what I mean by that. If I take up the contrast, see these creases on the bed? They're starting to disappear, as is this blanket here. So that's obviously too much. I'm going to take this back down again. Now, the good thing about this is we have this thing called the brightness origin. Now that controls where you're controlling from. Like if I take it all the way over to the left, then if I adjust this, everything is getting lighter. If I take it all the way over to the right, everything is getting darker. Here's a trick we can do. Crank up the amount to some ridiculous level and start bringing it down. Now I'm getting this very kind of stylized, posterized look to the image. But now I can see, well, all this image is going to get lighter. All these black images are definitely going to get darker. But also this bit around here is going to get a bit darker, but not into extreme amount. I'm getting 1, 2, 3, 4 different areas of color there. That suggests to me that I'm going to get a good range of tones on the baby's skin, which is what I want. So it's about, let's take it about there, 117, which is a lot higher than it was. I'm going to take this back down to 50. That's neutral. It's having no effect either way. Now I'm going to start sliding it slowly up. And yeah, I'm getting a good range of tones there, dark to light. But this shows you the next thing I wanted to talk about. If you increase the contrast, the colours are going to get more saturated. The colours there are a lot stronger than they were. Let's turn this off for a second. Colours quite washed out. Colours quite intense. Now this particular baby isn't that particular colour, it's a little bit more subtle. And that's why I've put saturation as my final slider here. I want this to be just a little bit less saturated. Now I could take the slider and start sliding it back down. Instead, I'm going to take the slider all the way to 0, and I'm going to start bringing the colour in slowly. And I'm watching the screen while I'm doing it. I'm watching the skin tones, not the slider, to whereabouts I want it. I want it about there. It's a judgment thing. You don't want a luminous baby there, because there's not too many luminous babies in the world. That seems to be about the right place for this. Now bear in mind, I can always come back to my exposure. I can always adjust that to where I want it. In fact, that gives a slightly more intimate mood if I drop it down a little bit. Contrast. Okay, I'll leave it where it is. Incidentally with this, if you come up here, exposure, contrast, saturation, you've got another thing here called multi-tool. Now with the multi-tool, you've got exposure, contrast, saturation. You'd think you've got all three of them there, but look, with the contrast, compare that with the actual contrast tool, you don't have this brightness origin, you don't have that flexibility. So I would say for the multi-tool, nah, don't need it. Use these three here to control your dark and light. This is the basic way to do it. There's other ways to do it, but this will work for a lot of your photographs. In fact, once you've done your changes with this and you've saved your picture, just get any picture at random and go exposure, contrast, saturation, all at default values, and then press your plus key, and I'm going to save this as the first of my presets. I'm going to call it AA Tone 01 and save. Now you can see it's right there. I'm going to call all my filters AA. The reason being is they start more or less at the top of the list right after the dates, so I can get them, and also if they're all called AA, I know they're all by me. hope you got something out of this video. If you did, maybe you consider clicking on one of the links below and check out my game called Disco Baby, which is on the iTunes Store or Android stores like Google Play. It has 3 different games in it, a memory game, a maths game for children, and a dance along with me game for toddlers to join in with. Thanks for your time.
Wow.